Welcome to our show, where we try to bring you different topics that inform you, educate you, entertain you, but most of all, keep you in the loop of what's going on around the world near you. With that, I want to bring a very interesting guest today to our show, about which the topic that we're going to talk about is something that we've been hearing about a lot of recently in the news. It's a topic that people know about, they think they know about, they want to know about, but at the same time, they want to distance themselves up to a certain extent. It's fear of the unknown, we don't know. But you know what? We're going to talk about it and see how we can inform and educate you with that today. I have a special guest in the studio with me, Mr. Harinder Singh from US, who took an initiative and became a part of a big movement in 2015 for Sarbat Khalsa 2015, which was held in November in Punjab, India. The whole movement itself brought a huge uproar and at the same time appreciation from the Sikh community around the world. People wanted a change. People wanted to see the change. They just didn't know how that change would come about. Maybe this Sarbat Khalsa initiative was something they were all waiting for. But what happened after it and what spun off from there, we're going to talk to him. This is the first exclusive interview that Mr. Harinder Singh is doing with us right here in America with us. Hello, and thank you so much, Harinder Singh ji, for being with us today.
Hello, and Guru Fateh.
Guru Fateh to you too. So, Harinder ji, when we talk about Sarbat Khalsa, there are so many questions people have in their mind, but your reason for being here with us today is talking about something that spun off from there, and there's a new campaign that has started, Free Akal Takht. So before we go into anything, give me a real quick idea about Free Akal Takht.
Sure. So Free Akal Takht is obviously being developed out in a post-Sarbat Khalsa of November 2015. But the mandate in this is very, very clear and very simple.
Okay.
We basically are saying that Akal Takht Sahib is the only institution, the only institution in the world which belongs to all 30 million Sikhs. Every other institution has regional or geographical limitations or jurisdictions. So what we are saying is this institution, which is global in nature, which Sikhs now live in 180 countries, there are 30 million of us worldwide. So this institution needs to be free from interference from any state and every single political party, including the Sikh political parties. Because this is not just about Punjab, this is not just about people who want to be hyper politically active within Punjab or other movements within Punjab or India. So the mandate is simple. Free Akal Takht means, as Guru Har Gobind Sahib envisioned, this is about every Sikh. This belongs to every Sikh. So this should be interference. This should be free from interference from every nation state and every single political party, including Sikh political parties.
Well, you know what? Talking about being free from political parties, the first thing I will then ask you is, how did you, from US, get involved in Sarbat Khalsa in India? I mean, what was your involvement with it? Because you were involved in a very big way with it.
Well, it turned out to be that way. Essentially, I'm in New Jersey. I've been living in New Jersey for the last 4 years. Before that, I was in Texas. And to be honest, I've been studying Sarbat Khalsa through Sikh Research Institute. Before that, Fateh, before that, Sikh Network. We've been holding workshops on running Sarbat Khalsa since mid-90s. So this idea of Sarbat Khalsa, I never thought I'll be able to see within my lifetime. When in mid-October, the discussion started, people were asking me, what do I think about it? I said, it needs to have a process, it needs to have this, it needs to have that. And then haphazardly, there was a meeting called on October 31st in Yuba City. And because there is no system, it is going to be haphazard. But certain things evolved. I showed up there in personal capacities, then it became a little bit from institute angle. My wife and I both showed up there, actually. She was already there for Oracle Week or something. I said, don't come home, let's go there. And essentially what came out is, in a haphazard way, I say haphazard because people expect there are defined systems, they aren't. Everyone knew there was a crisis situation. I say crisis because there was systematic beadabis of Guru Granth Sahib going on. And systematic because it was more than one. And nobody was being arrested and nobody was being stopped from doing that. And secondly, the Panj Pyara system at Akal Takht Sahib had been completely undermined through the Jathedars. So that's a crisis in leadership. And in that crisis of leadership, something had to be done. We met in Yuba City with a bunch of other gurdwaras and
I
individuals.
remember, I was there.
That's right.
Covered
And
it,
then
yes.
out of there came that I was saying I should go to Punjab. I should at least look at what's going on. To be honest, I got on a plane and then I found out I'm one of the delegates as well. So 5 delegates were developed. And out of there, we ended up in Sarbat Khalsa.
Okay.
But really, you know, the thing is this. Nobody's going to send you invitations for these things. You know, this is about open stuff which is going on. And we know we don't have any systems. So whoever shows up is what's going on. 2 of the organizing parties called it. They ran most of it. They decided most of the things, almost all of the things. But my involvement was from a Sikh who's living in diaspora, thinking, you know, I've been talking. In fact, you know, I had organized a Sarbat Khalsa activity and workshop in Mohali in 98 or 99, where we got all the Gurmat college students together.
Okay.
So I had been thinking about it. And a bunch of us, through Secret Institute, we did workshops from Oxford University 3 years ago, all the way to Vancouver, basically 1 workshop a month that, hey, this is a decision-making process. Sikhs have their own internal decision-making process. It has been undermined for the last 200 years, and we need to revive it. So for someone who's been studying it, somebody who likes to talk about it, somebody who has been training people, I thought this is the opportunity of a lifetime that I should at least get involved. And in my involvement, it turned out that I wasn't just a spectator. I got involved in some of the delegation stuff. And also I ended up in the arena.
You got involved in the whole thing because you became known as, you know, the guy who represented America, the guy who represented the outside Sikhs from India. You know, being a founder of Sikri, people knew you. Being a founder of PDL, people knew you. So you always had this passion towards Sikhi, bringing education and reform. You were always there. But then in Sarbat Khalsa itself, you became the guy who was representing, you know, everyone knew your name, that you were representing the Sikhs from outside, from North America.
And, you know, that is a serious responsibility.
It is.
And I took it very seriously. This is why my role was not really what Harinder wants to do in there. It became, we are the vibe checkers. We got to ask the tough questions, even at the cost of some people getting upset. And people did get upset.
Of course.
But that's okay. You know, so it's kindness of the Sikh Sangats everywhere, including the diaspora Sikh Sangat. And by the way, people in Punjab, they came up afterwards, the Sarbat Khalsa finished, almost 400 or 500 of them. And they told me that how they expect people like me to remain involved. So I would say the Sikh psyche understands that some change is needed. And I was fortunate enough to get involved in a personal capacity, which became organizational capacity, which became North American capacity. So it's an experience of a lifetime, and I'm very fortunate to learn the intricacies of it, to also learn how hard it is to work on a mandate while people completely disagree on everything, including in what was happening in Yuba City, and on how easy and hard at the same time it is to actually do the right thing if we are focused on Shabad and Guru.
You know, I'm going to come and ask you a question about that then. You said it wasn't easy. Okay, it's definitely not an easy task when you're trying to bring about a change for something that's been set for years, okay? There were, you know, you brought about changes, everyone brought about changes, and there were resolutions, matte, that were passed at Sarbat Khalsa. What happened of those matte? What happened of those resolutions? Because those were passed to bring about these changes. So where did they go?
Sure. It's a fair question, and let me break it down a bit.
Yeah.
So first thing I want all your viewers to know very clearly is, this is a system Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj gave to us. This is a system Guru Nanak Sahib envisioned in Japji Sahib from the idea of Panch, which after the training for almost 200 plus years, Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj gave it to us in the idea of Panch. That system worked beautifully for 100 plus years in the 18th century when ISIS-like and ISIL-like forces were attacking South Asia. Now, since 1805, this system had been completely undermined. So I want you guys, your viewers, to understand one thing, which essentially is to appreciate that if something hasn't worked, has been undermined for last 200 plus years, it's going to take few attempts
Of course.
to revive it.
Yes.
So the process which was adopted to run it, it has serious flaws in it, but the attempt is worth getting involved in, and this is why we got involved. I personally got involved as well. So mates were developed, the resolutions were developed. Not every resolution was in line or inclusivity or in the spirit of consensus building, or it wasn't sometimes even the spirit of transparencies, things of that nature. But you know, the resolutions themselves were to be implemented by community at large and organizers at large. So there are 2-3 questions which popped up.
Okay.
What question was the validity of the resolutions,
Okay.
which I also understand. And
There were quite a few resolutions
well,
passed.
it was 13 in number, actually.
Exactly.
So one of the questions is it a resolution if there hasn't been enough consultancy on it? So second question is, who is really going to implement it? Third question would be, is it just a mere statement? Because resolution means you have a mandate, and in that mandate you have a deadline, you have assigned people to work on it. So if you look at it, only 2 of the resolution actually had that kind of a makeup. So in fairness, although it was organized primarily by Shromani Akali Dal Amritsar, headed by Mr. Maan, and United Akali Dal, and 2 of the prominent members of that are Pai Mohkam Singh and Pai Gurdeep Singh Bathinda, they all got arrested. Their organizations were sort of dysfunctional for almost a month or so. So they said November 30th is the deadline, then they said December 31st, but nothing had happened even after December 31st. So the problem in implementation, actually we have to start problem in development, and then before that we have to say problem in process. I am a process guy. To me, from a Gurbani's inspiration, from Shabad inspiration, the end results don't mean as much for Sikhs in the inspiration of Gurbani. Because Shabad is very clear on it. And so we need to have the right process. We need to have the right means. There were problems with the means. There were serious problems with the means. At the same time, I also understand that attempts will be needed, more attempts will be needed to revive the process.
Okay, I know it's time for a short break. We're going to take a short break and come back, and I want to continue this dialogue about something that you just said. The resolutions are passed, but what about the process before the resolutions? So stay tuned. We'll take a short break and come back and talk about the new campaign started, Free Akal Takht, as well as Sarbat Khalsa. We're talking today with Mr. Harinder Singh about Free Akal Takht, a new campaign that he has started, which spun off from Sarbat Khalsa in 2015. Before the break, now we were talking about the resolution, the mate that were passed at Sarbat Khalsa. There's something that you just made a statement before the break, that the resolutions were passed, but there was a foundation that had needed to be laid out before we ask for changes to come about, which is a very important thing that you said. Now, changes haven't happened. Nothing has happened. There's a system that's been running for 200 years. They wanted to change it, but no one was able to bring that enough force together to bring the change. So now, before we go about, wasn't this thought about earlier when we did Sarbat Khalsa, that, you know what, before we go ahead and pass resolutions and say, okay, these are the changes to be made, you need to lay down the groundwork to say, okay, you know what, this is the basic committee of it, this is the governing body, so and so forth, and these are the things we need to build towards eventually, rather than saying, here's the Sarbat Khalsa and these are the changes, let's bring them about.
So they're all very fair questions, but I want to present both sides to you.
But before you do, I just want to know why this wasn't thought of earlier.
Well, and this is a question everyone's asking, even before the event, after the event, and I'm going to add a question to it.
Okay.
So part of the mandate for us, those who went from a North American delegation, 5 of us, we were going around. 4 of us actually ended up going around, 5th person didn't. The idea, we talked to people who were objecting. We said, here are the 2 mandates. Should Akal Takht be free?
Yes.
Of any state interference, and should there be a global representation? Everyone agreed with that mandate. See, what was being faced is everyone knew this was a crisis situation.
Yeah.
So even the ones who were opposing agreed with the mandates, and my question and our question to them was, how come you're not developing any process? So it's not that the process has been undermined for 200 years, but it actually got replaced in 1925 with the All India Gurdwara Act. It's called Sikh Gurdwara Act, actually, of 1925. So for last 100 years, a legislative body was created through electoral process to run Sikh affairs.
Okay.
So since then, we haven't had it. About 30 years ago, to be more exact, if we go by November 10, 2015 date, about 29 years before that, there was an attempt to revive it, and actually it did happen. There was a Sarbat Khalsa in 1986. But here is the thing. Nobody's working on the process. Even when people who are asking, and I was one of those asking, but I'm also getting involved, knowing very well that it is not going to go too far because systems are not defined. But at the same time, it's crisis. In crisis, it's a catch-22.
Yes.
You know, chicken or egg or whatever you want to call it. Nothing can be fully devised. So the resolutions which were developed, 2 of them in Yuva City, I felt were very powerful. And Sangat came together, and however fashion it came together, it actually recognized that whatever gets implemented, including the new Jathedars, because you see, if there is a crisis in United Airlines here, the first thing they did was remove the CEO and chairman. This has to be done. This is what crisis means. In business world, it means this. In political world, it means this.
And
this is the Sikh political world.
Yes.
And same thing happened with the Pope in the religious world. You know, this is the first time you had a Pope who was removed while he's alive.
Yes.
So my point is, there is a change which is needed when there is a failure of leadership at the highest levels. In that scenario, the resolution which was adopted in Yuva City, which we pushed through and convinced people, the organizers of Sarbat Khalsa, it must be adopted, was whoever you come up with, there must be interim Jathedars, for example, interim leadership.
Okay.
And the reason is, there is no time to fully define it. So it hasn't been defined in the last 30 years. People have been talking about it, hasn't been defined in the last 2 years. Don't expect to get it defined in 10 days.
Exactly.
It's just not, and look, it's been 2 months. And I can tell you, people are still not defining it. And I'm a guy who keeps asking these questions. So I'm going to go back for a second and say, yes, there was no articulation of process, but even in that absence, there was some articulation of that whatever gets adopted, let's keep it only till April. And by April, there should be a process which is defined, which is inclusive in nature, which is transparent in nature, and everything is brought out in public.
You know, talking about defining these changes and everything, I feel that, you know, Sarbat Khalsa to a certain extent has caused a lot of confusion also.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things that I'll come to you is, when you say that, you know what, it needs to be separated, right? The political aspect of it, the religious aspect of it, they need to be separated. Things need to move. There needs to be transparency. All these things right now are very intertwined with each other, where people don't know, which is where the confusion comes from.
So
right?
let me actually address that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that religious and the political needs to be separated. So let me actually put it in my words.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the Sikh politics and the Sikh affairs, everything Sikhi needs to be separated from Punjab politics and Punjab affairs. And let me give you an example why. Punjab elections don't decide, and currently this is what's happening. This is why there's confusion. It is by ingenious design. That's why the confusion happens.
Of course.
The Punjab politics ends up defining who runs Sikh affairs.
Okay.
And here is my take. And there is a data to prove this. Since 1966, which is the founding of the Punjabi Suba or the Punjab statehood, different political parties have won Punjab's elections. Sometimes Congress, sometimes Akalis, traditional Akalis. It's not just the Badals. Previously, there were other people as well. And there have been 3 veins of Akalis, even in the Badal period 30 years ago. Regardless of who has won elections, none of them have worked to separate the Akal Takht Sahib. They all want to control it. So and this is why there's a confusion. What is going on is SGPC gets confused with Akal Takht, Punjab as a state gets confused with Akal Takht, and legally what they have done is all of them are actually controlling and have reduced the status of Akal Takht Sahib from a supreme authority of the Sikhs to just any other Gurdwara in Punjab. So what they are doing is, in fact, for the last 100 years, they actually love to keep this confusion alive.
Okay.
In this confusion, then the labels get thrown around, and what every Sikh needs to understand is Akal Takht Sahib is not just any other Gurdwara. Akal Takht Sahib cannot be regulated by any state government or any national governments. This is the Takht. Guru Amar Das Sahib's words and Guru Granth Sahib say very clearly say, Vadda Tera Darbar Sacha To Takht. We read it. It's a Ramkali ki war, you know, it's in the Darbar Sahib's chowkis, other places. People read it, but what does this mean? And Guru Har Gobind Sahib, when he established this was a parallel to, at the time, Delhi was a power and Lahore was a power. It was a parallel to that. And what they have done, and in that parallel, it worked. 18th century, it worked even when Sikhs had their own state. At the time, it was a monarchy, let's say Kingdom of Punjab. Even then, Akal Takht Sahib was separate. We talk about it with quite pride that Akali Phula Singh wouldn't listen to Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and wherever Maharaja Ranjit Singh wouldn't go because of his expansionist policies to protect people's right, he would go protected. So Akal Takht Sahib is a separate entity. It has nothing to do with any statehood. It has everything to do with the self-governance of the Sikhs.
But in past couple of years, many years, Akal Takht has become a part of SGPC. It is under SGPC. So you're telling me right now your campaign, your reason for being here today is telling me the campaign that has started, Free Akal Takht. Free Akal Takht from SGPC, from the political influence, okay?
From the politics of Punjab.
From the politics of Punjab,
because
which is
somebody
political
who becomes the
influence.
Chief Minister of Punjab, somebody who becomes the head of SGPC, they are manipulating Akal Takht and they have reduced it. And it's evident. Look at all the evidence. Let me make it more graphic. Can you imagine a sitting Jathedar of Akal Takht Sahib has been politically assassinated and his trial doesn't even take place fully? His name was Jathedar Gurdev Singh Konke. There are serious, grave implications of this. The manipulation started during the British period. That was the state at the time. And since then, it has been getting manipulated. So what we really have to look at is Akal Takht Sahib has to be separated from Punjab politics. Tomorrow, AAP might win, or Akalis might come back, or Congress might come back, or any other party might come back, or Shomroni Akali Dal Amritsar might come back because they're also going to be fighting election. There are splinter parties of CPI and CPIM who fight election. There are other Akali Dals, Panch Pradhanis and United and Morcha and 1920. My point is, regardless of which party becomes the party to rule Punjab, regardless of which party becomes party to rule SGPC, this evidence is so clear for last 100 years, none of them, literally none of them have done anything to keep Akal Takht Sahib as a sovereign entity.
So what makes you think the current powers that may be will so easily give it up if they haven't given it up in that many years? And with all the evidence, the screaming evidence, I must say, that's there in front of people's eyes, but yet they have put an eye to it and they just ignore it, so to speak. People who try to raise their voices get put behind bars. You were put behind bars, from what I understand, when you went to India during Sarbat Khalsa. You raised your voice, you said things, you were put behind bars. So
little correction there.
Yes.
Let me first talk about myself and then we'll talk about how is this possible. Firstly, I have been charged, but they did not arrest me. They did not serve me any warrants. In fact, they knew exactly where I was staying, which flight I was taking, and I was allowed to come back. But there are other people who are mentioned on the same FIR who definitely were arrested and put behind bars, and their cases can be checked upon.
Put behind bars because they were raising their voice to bring about a change.
So, I mean, yes, but it's more complicated than that. We really don't understand exactly which individuals are involved in which personal capacities, but at minimum, they were all part of Sarbat Khalsa as organizers or major participants.
Okay, so exactly my point. I come back to the same thing again. If you raise your voice to bring about a change, you're put behind bars or you're put under house arrest.
Yes.
So why would people, and you know what, before I even continue with that, the power of media in India is a whole lot different than the power of media here or outside of India. We have freedom of speech. You and I can have this conversation. I'm sure if I took this conversation in India, I wouldn't be able to.
So two things on that. And I want to come back to Akal Takht, how can it be possible if everything like this is going on? Firstly, Indian media, is changing a bit. But in case of Sikhs, it's not changing as much.
Absolutely.
And the reason is, if you look at the environment in India right now, under the right-wing Hindutva parties, I mean, look what they do to Arundhati Roy. She has to file for anticipatory bails because they're going to arrest her and charge her with sedition. Look what they have done to Amir Khan for suggesting and talking about what his wife has done. So one thing to understand is the left and the centrist media does talk about it. They might even talk about it more from a Muslim rights, but somehow they're afraid to talk about it from a Sikh angle. And I have my own theory on it, because in the mainstream media, they look at the Sikh political party, the ruling party, as being partners with the BJP, which causes problems for us.
Yes.
So it gets hyper-politicized from that angle, and sometimes people don't support Sikh issues. But coming back to, here is the thing. Firstly, there are some founded fears, but there are some unfounded fears as well. So let me talk about, I'm going to come to Gurbani to that.
Before you tell me these fears, I'm going to take a short break. Hang on to that thought.
Sure.
And of course, I'll tell my viewers, you want to continue watching this, you just have to stick around for after the break to find out what these fears are and what more we can tell you. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking today to Mr. Harinder Singh about a campaign that has started to free Akal Takht. Now, before the break, you were talking to us about the unfounded fears and founded fears among people for the changes that are being brought about in Punjab. Tell us.
So, founded fears, which I think are few, but they are very serious, is that state does take steps to discourage Sikhs from organizing themselves, even when it's not even when they have a legitimate right to do it, right? But in most cases, that happens with primarily organizers, not everyday people. So unfounded fears are this. Unfounded fears are the propaganda war has been going on against Sikhs as well as other minorities in India, or even in North America, that if you talk about Sikh affairs, you are somehow being anti-India. First thing is, I was being interviewed somewhere in India. They said, why do you hate India so much? I said, listen, man, I don't hate India. Indian government hates Sikhs. Sikhs by design don't have a concept of hate. Even if some Sikh is practicing that, then they have not understood what a Koankar idea is, what House of Guru Nanak is about. House of Guru Nanak is about, it's a house of love. We call it a house of light, which means how do you counter fear then? The way to counter fear is love. This is what Gurbani talks about it over and over. So what is this love? And let's talk about, I want to dwell on that a bit. The idea of love really is that you believe in a doctrine that love is something you operate in. Love is something you don't just declare. But the way you deal with it, the way you have conversation about any issue, the way you have a conversation about the toughest issues, you can do it when Pakhya Pao Apar is Guru Nanak's phrase in Abji Sahib, that the language needs to be of love. So this is where Sikhs operate from. Some Sikhs, even if they are not able to do it, we have internal struggles, then we need to learn how to have a tough conversation, but we have to have it in love. So my point is, the way you counter fears is through love. The way you counter fear is based out of anger as well, and we can't be operating in anger. We have known this. If you look at the warrior code of the Sikhs, or even the humanitarian code of the Sikhs, any code of the Sikhs, we had this idea of love operating, and it wasn't just an idea, it was something seen in practice. So all I'm saying is, if our Guru has been put behind bars, the founder of the faith, Guru Nanak Sahib himself, and there's a Gurdwara, I've been to that Gurdwara, it's in current day Pakistan, where you know how we talk about Siberia, there's a hard labor. Back then the hard labor in Punjab was chakki pisai jandi si. That was a hard labor. 6 out of the 10 gurus, and this is what I want to go back to. 6 need to understand their narrative. We are the people of Nirpa Nirvair. It's very simple. And what does that mean? If 6 out of the 10 gurus have been jailed, if there have been attempts for political assassinations, if they have been tortured, and 2 of them have been politically assassinated, we call them martyrdom. Sikh DNA says we will operate in love, and the other doctrine which they gave us with love was of doctrine of justice. This is who we are. So if we are afraid to even have a conversation, we need to do a check. Why are we afraid? Isn't this what our Guru taught us? He gave us a particular way to talk, and let's revive that and have conversation in our homes, as well as on media, as well as in public spaces.
But like I said, I come back to it again. In India, if you raise your voice that you want to bring about this change, we thought you were arrested because that's what media put out there, that you're arrested. That's what newspapers had, that Harinder Singh is arrested. And we were like, wow, he's from the US. Yeah. So this is what the media gives us. Yes. Obviously, mass media, whatever they feed is what people understand.
Saving grace for Sikhs is we have social media and we have alternative media sources like yours. And this is where I think, and by the way, this is happening worldwide.
Yes.
And we need to understand this, that everywhere there is a propaganda war. It's a war, it's a battle of ideas, we call it. It's more in some places than others. India definitely has its own skewed versions of this. So there are alternative medias we need to look into. But here is another thing. I want to highlight, since when does the state or its agencies talk about what Guru Nanak was up to? They're going to denounce him. And that's what they did. Look at Guru Arjan Sahib's history. His own brothers even conspired to work with the states or the Masans of the time, including his own family members. And what was his crime? His crime was that he had put together the incredible gift for the world, and he writes it like that, and he called it Pyo Da Deda Khol Ditha Khajana, which is the Guru Granth Sahib. And what did he do with it? Because he open sourced the ideas of wisdom, where he questions, and this is where I'm going to bring it back to our discussion. It's Guru Arjan Shabad in Guru Granth Sahib, where he says, I want to talk about the qualifications for anyone who wants to be head of the state. Takht Raja Sobh hai, jo takhte layak hoi. So my point is, our guru, the paradigm in Sikhi is all about, I'm going to have incredibly personal, intimate relationship with the divine, and part of that relationship is I want to change the surroundings and fight for people's right and justice.
So talking about bringing the change for the surroundings, what makes you think that the current SGPC control of Akal Takht will so easily give it up to the new changes, to new governing bodies
Sure.
that are going to come about?
I hear you, but the only thing I can present is Gurbani and history.
Okay.
When has it, in fact, anywhere in the world, when is it easy to bring any change? Even in corporations, it's so hard. When you are paying people to do their jobs, even then it's so hard, and they bring in a change management team, right?
Yeah.
So to expect anything is easy. Even if there's a 1% chance of this succeeding, we gotta go. I'm saying we're answerable to the Guru.
Okay.
It wasn't easy 100 years ago. It required jathas of 500s multiple times to free your gurdwaras. It wasn't easy. Some of them sat down under the railway tracks just to feed langar. Was it easy? No. Was it easy for Guru Tegh Bahadur when Shiha was hired to assassinate him and there's a gurdwara to commemorate it near in Amritsar area? My point is, it's never easy. Sikhs were not taught an easy path. Anyone who's a change agent in the world will tell you nothing is easy. So then why should we do it? That might be, and why should people even think about doing it? Because if I or you or anyone who says I'm a Sikh, this is not a proclamation. Because today we fight about that, who's a Sikh. And I want to change that.
Okay.
In Guru Granth Sahib's paradigm, there is no question of definition, by the way. The definition was thrown on us by the same act which actually made Akal Takht immaterial and irrelevant to us. Just realize that.
Okay.
We are being governed by the laws of a country which decides who's a Sikh. And since then, now we fight about who's a Sikh, right? It's always a question of what is the definition of a Sikh.
It is.
Let's go back to Gurbani. We were told, if you say you are a Sikh, this is what you do. It's a different paradigm, which means the onus is on the individual. So we need to take ideas like this, which are very inclusive. There is no exclusion. You can self-exclude yourself. But Gurbani's idea is we include everyone. If you say you are a Sikh, you're included. We are the people of the spirit. In the people of the spirit, we change the destiny of South Asia. When Sikh institutions were free 100 years ago, you know what we did? We freed India and Pakistan.
Okay.
That's a fact. When Sikh institutions became free, even then, the leaders of the All India Congress at the time came down and congratulated, let's follow the Sikh model. Let's follow what Baba Khadak Singh did. I'm saying this because right now, Sikhs are not able to do much for Punjab, right? Look what Punjab is going through. Because Sikhs themselves are not free. Our DNA has been altered. We are being supplied, what do I call it, GMO. We have become the GMO Sikhs now. We need to be non-GMO. And how do we become non-GMO, genetically modified? We have been. The way we think has changed. We don't even look at the paradigm in Guru Granth Sahib anymore. We don't look at the Sikh history for inspiration. And this is what needs to come back. Whether it is the organizers of Sarbat Khalsa, whether it is the dysfunctionalities in the local gurdwaras of New York City, it's the same problem everywhere. The problem is we are not interested in proactive, we will say, inclusiveness.
Okay.
We gotta include people by invitation, whereas we exclude them by invitation. This is the problem we are in. So the thesis of Gurbani, the Sikh revolution's ideas have been completely changed and we need to revive them. And part of that revival is the institution which belongs to all Sikhs globally is Sri Akal Takht Sahib. All of us need to become agents to completely make it free from any interference of any kind.
So what kind of changes can you bring about than what's currently there? What governing bodies are you bringing in and what kind of changes are you proposing?
So actually it's a group of us who's proposing this. When I came back from Sarbat Khalsa, I had a long conversations with my wife and one of my board members and then several board members and some friends. And that's the reason why I left Sikri Institute and Punjab Digital Library. And I want to actually talk about that for a second. Sikri has an education mandate.
Yes.
PDL has a digital archiving mandate.
Yes.
Generally what happens is when the founders or the leadership, they end up changing the mandates of organization. And this is something I talked with my board. I said, I want to go work on more activism now, and I should legally and ethically resign. So this is what I did. I'm on good terms with them. I still do consultancies and guest lectures for them, and I will continue to. But this mandate this is now about the Panth.
Yeah.
Something we have been learning about. We need to change game. So whether you'll read Malcolm Gladwell's book on tipping point and groundswell, mainstream Sikhs have become risk averse. People on the right have incredible commitment, but they cannot be the only ones who are occupying this space. People on the left are very sharp, but they're only critiquing. This movement really is about Akal Takht Sahib belongs to people on the left, right, and center. This cannot be the space which is controlled by 35 to 100 men. This is the space which Guru gave to all Sikhs, and we need to revive the Khalsa consciousness. We need to actually go out of our way to different Sikh spaces and make this about every Sikh.
Okay, how? What is it? How can you bring about this change?
We are saying no one organization or individuals, including ourselves, should be defining this. So what is, right now, everything Sikhs have, we disagree on because our system has been hijacked for 100 plus years, legally.
By SGPC?
SGPC
We
is
can
through a
say it
Gurdwara
out loud?
Act, right?
Okay.
So what happens is they only represent Punjab, in first of all. Secondly, even if you believe in that, they haven't had elections in the last 4 years. Last year, they had put a chief administrator who decides everything for us now. In Washington, D.C., which doesn't have a state, from American example, we call this taxation without representation. We are asked to follow all their system. Hukumnamas come our way. Is Hukumnama really the way? We know they are not working because they don't understand the mandate. And where is the deliberation in all this process? Sarbat Khalsa is supposed to be a delegate body. Who's choosing these delegates anymore? The problem is there's a complete breakdown of the system. So what we are saying is we need to have a conversation on process, not on which project matters most, because everyone's got their pet project.
Of course.
Right? And they believe this is the only thing to do. Every project is good. Continue doing your work. What we are saying is to bring 30 million Sikhs on the same platform, let's agree on the process. For example, this is a conversation we are trying to do now. This is not just about who should be a Jathedar and how to conduct a Sarbat Khalsa. Imagine, you know how we have those puzzles, pieces?
Yes.
Let's say there are 100 puzzle pieces. So everyone's talking about these two pieces. We are saying no. There's a larger governance issue. Can you imagine running Sikh affairs? Ismailis have figured out how to run their affairs without a state. Aga Khanis are doing it. First Nation assemblies in Canada are doing it. Even in a physical sense, Swaziland is doing, Somaliland is doing it. European Union's got its own models. My point is Sikhs have their own model too. And what we are saying is, can we agree on the process? And how will we agree? So here are the questions. What is the relationship between Sarbat Khalsa, Panj Pyare, Akal Takht system, and the Jathedars? What is the checks and balances among them? What is the mandate between each of these? And that's the crux of the issue we should be discussing.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and I want to come back and ask a few more questions about bringing about this change. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking today with Mr. Harinder Singh, talking about bringing changes at Akal Takht, Free Akal Takht campaign that he has started. Now, before the break, you were telling us about different processes, different ways to bring about changes. I want you to continue and tell me about that.
Sure. So firstly, I was saying we need to understand if we are going to have our own governance, imagine the kind of things Guru Har Gobind Sahib is asking us to do. How can we have a governance system if we have not developed criteria for everything? If there is a Sarbat Khalsa, who needs to be delegate in there? What is the deliberative process? What is the authority of the Panj Pyaras? Is Jathedar the decision maker or the implementer of the decisions? What is the criteria for selection of Jathedars? All these questions, we first developed 10 of them. Then we said, let's create a framework for governance.
Okay.
And let's have a questions and comments from people globally.
Okay.
So now we create an open Google Doc. If you go to freeakaltakht.org, there's an open Google Doc. Those 10 questions became 100 questions. Then we put them in different buckets. And these 100 questions now people, whether we do it through town halls, we did town halls in UK last week. This week we are starting it in East Coast, both. It will happen in New Jersey. Next week, we're going to go to Toronto and do it. And we'll be going to in Australia next month. The point is we need to have a global conversations on these. And what we did is we developed with a group of us, we're just creating this as, consider us like the consultants to the Panth, because nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
Deadlines come and go. We'll be ready for next Sarbat Khalsas and people will be asking, what's the process? Because nobody's developing. So we said, let's ask tough questions. And let's not ask only in the hyper-political parties who are interested, but let's ask global Sangats, because it's about Sangats.
Absolutely.
So we have created an open Google Doc, and next week, we have invested in a software called Limio. This is a software social movements in the world are using to develop a consensus building.
Okay.
Everyone says Sarvasammati, but you know how consensus building in Sikh world currently works. Whoever pushes through in, they just do Jakara and finish it. No.
That's it.
If C-SPAN can show a live debate, we need to have a live debate about each resolution which is being developed. What's the game plan? How is this relevant to all Sikhs? That's the kind of conversation we would like. So your viewers, I actually ask all of them, if I may,
Sure.
go to www.freeakaltakht.org, look at the Google Doc, put in your comments, ask the questions which are not being asked, and the only thing we ask is we don't want any contribution, we want contribution of your perspective. Drishti kona, na, perspective. We want conversation on how to govern. This is an amazing problem to solve today, by the way.
Okay.
This is a challenge.
Uh-huh.
Because people we have very smart people in our community. Some of them are watching right now. We need the smartest, most cultured, innovative brains to solve this, regardless of who the decision makers become. Because it's not just about decision makers. It's about, even if you get the best person right now or best people to do it, if there is no system behind it, if there's no governance document behind it, we are not going to go very far.
You know, and I agree with you on that one, because I will tell you, the Sarbat Khalsa that was held in November, okay, the entire Sikh community, the Khalsa Panth around the world was looking at it to understand what is going to come of it, okay? What is the new changes that are going to be brought about? But at the same time, and they all wanted, I believe to a certain extent, that please let's keep the politics and religion separate.
Right.
Let's try to, you know, keep them in a certain path. They can run parallel, but let's not cross roads with them. But when Sarbat Khalsa did happen, and this is the question I will ask you because you were there representing North Americans, how come when they are talking about keeping things separate, that's one thing everyone wants for, which is what you want when we're saying keeping free Akal Takht, free it from SGPC control, free it from the political influence, then how come they appointed the new Jathedar, Jagtar Singh Hawara, who currently is behind bars for political, non-political reasons, but still involved to a certain extent to political extent. Now, if you have someone like him, we want to bring someone who's religiously connected to run the Akal Takht, right? Who can guide the Panth. People can look up to them for guidance, right? But then you bring in somebody who's now involved up to a political extent and put him there. But then 30 seconds later, he's gone. That causes a confusion in people's mind that, wait a minute, do you guys know what you're doing there? Or what is this confusion about?
You're absolutely right in asking these questions, but I want to mention one as the idea of Sikhi, and then I'll come to the reality.
Okay.
In Sikhi, by the way, Meri Piri is hyphenated, which means religious and political comes together. So what I was saying was, inner religious and inner political, which is what is represented through Harinder Sahib and Akal Takht Sahib complex, what is happening is the political of India or political of Punjab is affecting this.
And
that's the problem. Exactly. So it's
now,
not that within Sikh affairs we need to separate them. I'm saying Sikh affairs need to be separated from Indian and Punjab affairs. So coming to the reality of Sarbat Khalsa.
But right now, it is being, SGPC, the way it's being run, it's with the political influence of Punjab government.
Of course,
being dictated and mandated by them.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. Okay.
But I'm saying in Sikh principle, religious and political is not separate.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the state politically is interfering in Sikh affairs. Because when you have a same individual who's a current CM who appoints the DGP of Punjab, it's the same individual who appoints the Jathedar for Sikhs, there is no check and balance.
Yes.
But at the same time, coming back to the Sarbat Khalsa of 2015, we also are lacking systems internally for checks and balances. Because if the same organizers are utilizing, regardless of who it is, sometimes in Sikh history, there are going to be warriors who become the leaders. In other times, there might not be. It is not really, that's why the mandate which went from Yuva City, and this is the mandate which globally, and people who did not participate, even they agreed. Even the organizers had agreed, but their mandate was whoever you end up choosing. By the way, we were not party to it. The organizers did not confide in us or share with us. I also found out the names. If you notice, I'm standing there, I'm writing the names as they're announcing everything. So the English resolution, which I helped draft, it's blank spaces because we did not know the names ourselves. But our mandate was, whatever the names are, they should be only till April. But you got it right. there was incredible manipulation even on the stage. If you see it within 2 hours, the resignations being sought of certain political party heads, and they are being installed as interim of interim jathedar, which in itself is oxymoron. But I understand that there are going to be these kind of challenges and problems because there is internally problem of what I call transparency, inclusiveness, and other nature. And they will continue because in the Sikh world, until we adopt a process, which is what Free Akal Takht is about, that we need to agree on the mandate. We need to agree on the process. We need to agree on how Sikhs will come together, regardless of their positions. We know there are Sikhs who are Khalistanis and anti-Khalistanis. We know there are Sikhs who are Modi lovers and anti-Modi lovers. We know there are Sikhs who wear turban, who don't wear turban. We know Sikhs who are Amritaris and non-Amritaris, meat eaters and non-meat eaters. What we are saying is, we need to have a system of, it's like in America, there's election going on. There was a primary here. You know, what did the New Hampshire primary say? Just because there are all sorts of candidates.
Yes.
But eventually, the candidates who survive, they end to win. Eventually, those who win govern all of America, not just the ones who put them in power. And that's something we need to understand. We need to have a system which is beyond India and beyond Punjab, because we are in 180 countries.
Yes.
There are 30 million of us. 6 million of us are in diaspora. Almost 20% of our population is diaspora population now, which means we need the system where we can sit in civility, use the Shabad as the only guiding light, use the governance principles available to us in the world, demonstrate to all Sikhs that we have a system for processes, demonstrate to the world, then they will take us more seriously, that we have a system. If we agree to the process, then every year we can have a priority, what matters most to the Sikh nation. And that is missing. It's missing because legally they have made sure it cannot happen. And what we as lovers of the Guru need to revive that system.
Okay. And you think this new change that you're bringing about, Free Akal Takht, to bring this change about, to bring this freedom about. And you know what, like you said, there are millions of people outside of India, but yet, even though we're outside of India, you and I both, we still look up to Akal Takht as the highest supreme being for us. Whatever comes from Akal Takht, even if we think it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. So we are following that word.
This is the greatness in us, right? That we know institutionally, we salute it.
Yes.
What I'm talking about is, we cannot be saluting just the institution if that institution is in the terms of Occupy movement has been occupied for almost 100 years. And I've given enough data and everyone knows how it's been occupied. So let's flip it. What we need is everyone to agree to the mandate. And if we have an agreement on mandate, we can very clearly demonstrate that we agree to a process. You know, there are breakdowns in process here and there, but Sikhs haven't even had a process. We haven't even articulated it. Let's articulate it. Let's dream. I call it, let's be romantic. We are supposed to be romantics. We are dreamers. We're going to dream this on behalf of Guru Har Gobind Sahib. And just like New Hampshire primary, you know what, I'm going to use New Hampshire as it's disrupting things, right? For Democrats as well as Republicans. And people have to think about how to do things. But you know what's the motto of New Hampshire? Nobody says the motto is wrong. It says live free or die. This is about mentally we need to become free. Every Sikh, by definition, if you want to say any definition, I say in the spirit of Gurbani, the first thing Guru Nanak worked on was, Guru Nanak Sahib is telling us mentally you need to become free. Spiritually we need to become free. People who are mentally and spiritually free, how can they be economically and politically be under someone? So this is what has happened. Free Akal Takht, free word in English is an adjective. It's also a verb. It's also an adverb. So we need to do all three.
All of them.
We understand in idea Akal Takht is free, but it's not free in practice. We need to make it. It's going to require a lot of work, which essentially is, first thing, the only thing I ask right now is, go work on the document, put your ideas, force the conversations in your homes, because this is not just about 1 or 2 jathebandis who are hyperactive. This is where the space we need to change. You know how everyone wants to see more women and youth at Sarbat Khalsa? It is not going to happen unless you ask for it. You have to push the same thing internally so we can get it externally. You got to ask for a seat on the table, get involved in this. We want more women. So in our group, in our subgroup, if you go on freeakaltakht.org, you will see we have men and women, both primarily of second generation, because we want to perform and push this idea. This idea needs to go to all gurdwaras, This needs to go to all Sikh organizations. And you can completely disagree with it, but tell us why you disagree and what's a better alternative, because this is about self-governance, global self-governance of all Sikhs.
So if people want to go and agree or disagree with you and give you their thoughts, where can they go? Tell our viewers that.
We've been putting hashtags there, Free Akal Takht. It's a website, Takht is spelled takht.org. There's an open Google Doc. We have come up with about 100 questions. We have come up with literally definitions for governance purposes of all the words you've been hearing so far. And what we are about to do next, based on all your inputs, by going to town halls, online, and shows like this, we're about to put all this in Limio, which is a consensus development software which social movements in the world are using to come up with a draft, which then we all need to look at for governance of Sikhs. It might require a few attempts, as I said earlier. It might even require a couple of years to come to this, but this is the first time this kind of experiment is taking place. I'm interested in this experiment. I know all of you are everyone wants things to happen. They're not going to happen unless we agree on a process. And this is about agreeing on a process which is Guru granted. It's born out of Shabad and Gurbani, but has international governance principles built into it. And one of that principle we are adopting is called, it's the second principle we wrote. First one is Gurbani inspired. We have 10 of them, and you can check it out. Second one is called proactive inclusivity. Don't expect people will join. We have to go to all the Sikh spaces, and at least they should be aware this is going on. And we are working very hard. Our team is working very hard. We're going to different seminars, different shows, different radios, and online blogging, and physically going to different diaspora communities before we start launching this in Punjab. And by the way, our website is both in Punjabi and English, so feel free to give comments in both.
Great. Well, you know what? I want to thank you so much for joining us today and giving us this exclusive interview to bring your work forward to people and educating and informing them about what Sarbat Khalsa 2015 was, and of course, Free Akal Takht, the new campaign that you've started. Good luck with it, and we want to thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you for giving us the space.
Thank you. And with that, I want to thank you all for watching our show today. Go ahead, get involved. You have Harinder's Twitter tag right there on the screen, so please go ahead and tweet with him, give him your thoughts, but at the same time, check out their website and be a voice. If you want to bring a change, be a voice, at least voice what that change is, so they know which direction they can go with, and it can only be done with your help. With that, I want to thank you all for watching our show. You can tweet with me, give me your thoughts, give me your suggestions. I'm always open to hearing from you. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook. All our videos are posted there. Our interviews are posted there. And we would love to hear what you would like us to talk about. Have a good evening and good night.